And now, Hal Lindsey.
Good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Hal Lindsey Report. On Saturday, April 14th at 4 a.m. Damascus time, the United States, United Kingdom, and French militaries struck key Syrian chemical weapons sites. They used cruise missiles from ships and submarines in the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and the Eastern Mediterranean. They also employed 2 U.S. B-1 bombers flying out of Qatar. The aerial bombardment was a response to yet another chemical weapons attack by the Syrian regime. President Trump presented his reasoning to the nation.
The purpose of our actions tonight is to establish a strong deterrent against the production, spread, and use of chemical weapons. Establishing this deterrent is a vital national security interest of the United States.
Russia, Iran, and Syria denied everything. However, they also said that Syria repelled the attack. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the Syrians intercepted 71 of the more than 100 cruise missiles fired. The U.S., UK, and France said none were shot down. Had they actually shot down 71 cruise missiles, there would be a great deal of identifiable wreckage to display. There isn't any. In short, they're lying. And look at the size of the lie. 71 missiles shot down. It makes Russia look ridiculous. Its government has lied so long and so often that it means nothing when they deny the Syrian gas attack. President Trump has said he wants to get the United States out of Syria, not more deeply involved.
ISIS will be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now.
He didn't want there to be a gas attack by Syria, but the evidence is irrefutable. He tweeted, "Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to outside world." The French government said, beyond possible doubt, a chemical attack was carried out against civilians at Douma, and there is no plausible scenario other than that of an attack by Syrian armed forces. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, responded, "Attacking Syria is a crime. U.S. President, UK Prime Minister, and the President of France are criminals. But the criminals are the ones who use chemical weapons on children and their families. International law prohibits both the manufacturing and use of chemical weapons. Using them is considered a war crime by the Chemical Weapons Convention. Syria is one of the 192 nations that have ratified the treaty. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons verified in 2014 that Syria's chemical weapons stockpile had been 100% destroyed. But mysteriously, Syria kept using them. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, told the Security Council,
"The United States estimates that Assad has used chemical weapons in the Syrian war at least 50 times. Public estimates are as high as 200.
She told reporters,
So you have a member who has used chemical weapons. You have a country, Russia, who's helped them cover up the use of chemical weapons, and we have a violation of international law. So what else are we supposed to do?" And then another chemical weapons attack happens. And here they're going to attempt to say it's fake. At some point, you have to do something. At some point, you have to say enough.
Russian President Vladimir Putin called the U.S.-led attack an act of aggression against a sovereign state. You have to give Putin points for audacity. Remember that only 4 years ago, he sent Russian troops into Crimea and blatantly stole it from Ukraine. He shows respect for the sovereignty of other nations only when it suits his purpose. Make no mistake, Vladimir Putin is the world's most dangerous man. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley told the Security Council,
"It is Russia alone that used its veto 6 times to prevent the condemnation of Assad's use of chemical weapons. It is Russia alone that used its veto 12 times to protect the Assad regime. And to make matters worse, it is Russia alone that had agreed to be the guarantor of the removal of all chemical weapons in Syria. If Russia had lived up to its commitment, there would be no chemical weapons in Syria, and we would not be here today."
These are weapons of terror. There are many ways to kill people, but chemical weapons ensure that every death will be horrific, the equivalent of torture. This is done to intimidate enemies and potential enemies. On Fox News, Eric Shawn interviewed the UK's new ambassador to the United Nations, Karen Pierce, about Russia's recent action undermining the chemical weapons ban. She said, "We find it astounding that Russia can now be one of those rogue countries that are looking to undo it." Shawn asked, "Do you feel that Russia is, as you say, a rogue country?" Ambassador Pierce answered, "I think it has those tendencies. But remember, this rogue state is not like North Korea or Iran. This one has at least 7,300 nuclear warheads and the ICBMs to deliver them. They also have an unknown number of chemical and biological weapons at their disposal." Before the punitive attack by the US, UK, and France, Russian signals were ominous. They were meant to frighten and intimidate, to terrorize. Putin's ambassador to Lebanon said, "If there is a strike by the Americans, then the missiles will be downed and even the source from which the missile was fired. To attack the sources from which the missiles were fired would mean a Russian attack on the United States Navy. That's World War III talk. And it gets worse." Russia's UN ambassador said, "The danger of escalation is higher than simply Syria." He added, "We hope that there will be no point of no return, that the U.S. and their allies will refrain from military action against a sovereign state." Anticipating the attack, the Russian military went on high alert. Russian television news told citizens to begin stocking up on water and to buy gas masks. Russia has state-of-the-art missile defenses in Syria. They did not use them. So how will Russia respond? In recent years, they have acted more and more like a terrorist state. In March, Bloomberg reported, Russian hackers are conducting a broad assault on the U.S. electric grid, water processing plants, air transportation facilities, and other targets in rolling attacks on some of the country's most sensitive infrastructure. They have also tried to hack voting machines and undermine the election process. They have murdered or tried to murder Putin's political enemies, even on foreign soil. But how will they respond this time? They may try to step up their terrorist activities, and no one has more dangerous terrorism tools than Russia. In terms of biological, chemical, and nuclear capabilities, they remain a superpower. They could try to use those weapons in covert ways that can't be traced to them. For instance, they might pass such weapons to known terrorist groups. It was important for President Trump to work in solidarity with France and the UK. But you'll notice that the other great European power Germany was missing. Why? We recently learned that Germany made a scandalous deal with Russia for cheaper natural gas than anyone else in the European Union. So, the richest country in Europe now gets the cheapest natural gas prices on the continent. It's a sweet deal, but it costs Germany its integrity. Until Israel completes its natural gas pipeline to Europe, Russia will be able to use its gas monopoly to manipulate European nations in all kinds of ways. Israel expects to complete their pipeline by 2025. So, for Russia, the clock is ticking.
Each week on the Hal Lindsey Report, I try to show you how today's events are bringing to life the predictions of the ancient prophets. Like a watchman on the wall, I'm warning you that time is short. Christ will soon return for His church, and I want you to be ready to go. And I want you to see how urgent it is that you make certain your family, your friends, and those around you are ready to go too. Please help me continue this work and help me take the necessary steps to broadcast the Hal Lindsey Report into more homes in America. I need your help now more than ever before.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Hal Lindsey Media Ministries, P.O. Box 470470, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74147. You can also support this ministry online. Visit hallindsey.com or call 1-888-RAPTURE.
I have many concerns about the declining moral standards in the United States. But even Syria knows that when it comes to the military, Americans are still the good guys. Syrians danced in the streets of Damascus the night of the attack by the Western nations. They knew that as civilians, they were safe. The Syrian military kills with the cruel, blunt instruments of chemical weapons. They use barrel bombs, which are nothing more than indiscriminate killing and maiming machines. President Trump said,
I also have a message tonight for the two governments most responsible for supporting, equipping, and financing the criminal Assad regime. To Iran and to Russia, I ask, what kind of a nation wants to be associated with the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children?
America attacks carefully. Pentagon spokeswoman Dana White said the attack was methodically planned to minimize potential collateral damage. Unlike the proverbial bull in the China shop, the U.S. fires a missile into the China shop and breaks a single dish. But the U.S., UK, and France did strike a sovereign country. Then, why are we still the good guys? British Prime Minister Theresa May gave the answer.
For we cannot allow the use of chemical weapons to become normalised, either within Syria, on the streets of the UK, or elsewhere. So while the action was taken to alleviate humanitarian suffering in Syria by degrading the regime's chemical weapons capability and deterring its use of these weapons, it will also send a clear message to anyone who believes they can use chemical weapons with impunity. We cannot go back to a world where the use of chemical weapons becomes normalised. But I am clear that the way we protect our national interest is to stand up for the global rules and standards that keep us safe.
It was important for her to point out that this happened on a small scale in her country just a few weeks ago. Happily, no one died in Britain, at least not this time. In Syria, gas attacks occur with regularity, and in both places, Syria and England. The perpetrators of those attacks happen to be allied Russia and Syria. Such atrocities cannot be allowed to stand. Unlike a nuclear program, a massive chemical stockpile can be created with little expense. Chemical weapons could easily become the poor country's weapon of mass destruction. If this evil genie gets out of the bottle, no one will be safe. Syria, Russia, and Iran remain problematic. President Trump tweeted, "Our relationship with Russia is worse now than it has ever been, and that includes the Cold War." That's a remarkable thing for any president to admit. Nancy Pelosi agreed with the president's decision to strike Syria, but added, "One night of airstrikes is not a substitute for a clear, comprehensive Syria strategy." Senator Lindsey Graham called it a weak military response, not the type of sustained, game-changing strategy that will lead to Assad, Russia, or Iran changing or reevaluating their strategy in Syria. But a sustained, game-changing strategy would mean heavy U.S. involvement in Syria, and that begs the question, who should we fight to support? Senator Graham believes Muslim rebel groups can be trusted to take over Syria and turn it into a constitutional democracy. Obviously, that strategy has not worked anywhere else in the world. Even the Muslim rebels not directly affiliated with Al-Qaeda or ISIS still cooperate with them regularly. To replace Assad with the rebels would require that America go to war, not just with Syria, but with Russia and Iran. It would tip the world economy into chaos. It would cost thousands, maybe millions of lives. It could easily lead to World War III. Over the last few weeks, I've talked a lot about Ezekiel 38 and 39. That's the prophecy of an enormous Russian and Iranian-led invasion of Israel during the tribulation. There's a chance that Russia will remain in Syria from now on until that time. God said He would put hooks in the Russians' jaws and pull them toward Israel. Those hooks may already be in place, just waiting for God to give them a tug.
Hal Lindsey is pleased to present his first ever audiobook, Faith for Earth's Final Hour, read in its entirety by Joel Weldon, professional voiceover artist.
Recognizing the truth of Titus 3:5, not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to His mercy He saved us.
This audiobook is now available for purchase in 3 formats: a 9-CD set for $44.99 plus shipping and handling, a USB flash drive for $44.99 plus shipping and handling, or as an audio download from hallindsey.com for $24.99. You can order your audiobook of Faith for Earth's Final Hour by visiting hallindsey.com or phoning toll-free 1-888-RAPTURE.
Jonathan Swift wrote, "Falsehood flies and the truth comes limping after it." Jonathan Swift died in 1745. Printing presses were slow in 1745. Communications were even slower. Today, a person can get on the internet, make up a story out of thin air, and see it circling the globe within hours or even minutes. But blatantly false stories are not my biggest concern. I'm concerned about straight reporters who allow personal prejudice or political expediency to alter their coverage. I'm also talking about editors, producers, and publishers who choose stories based on whether those stories advance a particular political, religious, or cultural narrative. We live in the middle of a chorus of voices full of opinion and shouting to be heard. The musical Godspell begins with the actor who portrays Jesus saying, "My name is known, God and King. I am most in majesty, in whom no beginning may be and no end. The company then enters the stage portraying various philosophers. The philosophers sing their points of view as solos and then in discordant counterpoint. They call it the Tower of Babel. The many voices are interrupted by John the Baptist's character blowing a shofar. And then he sings,
"Prepare ye the way of the Lord."
That is a powerful opening. The shofar represents the voices of Abraham, Moses, David, and other ancient Hebrew prophets. The words, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord," hearken back to Isaiah, who said that the Messiah would have a forerunner. The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. Jesus is not just another guy with an opinion. Jesus spoke with the authority of God. Prophets told all kinds of things about him before he came. They told humanity how to recognize him, and Jesus fit the bill with miraculous perfection. But how do we know that the prophets really spoke for God? What were their credentials? Through Moses, God anticipated this question. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 21, he said, "And you may say in your heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord has not spoken?" Then he gave the amazingly simple yet powerful answer. When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him. The prophets had to be 100% accurate. The penalty for a single failure was stoning. A Greek proverb says that the best guesser is the best prophet. If the prophets of Israel had been simply guessers, they would have experienced the slow and torturous death inflicted by hurled stones. The prophets of Israel made short-range predictions which would be fulfilled during their lifetimes. But they also made long-range predictions about events far in the future. They didn't always understand the significance of their own prophecies. Many of these prophecies predict exact historical happenings which will lead to the end of history as we know it. The astonishing thing to those of us who have studied the prophetic scriptures is that we are watching the fulfillment of these prophecies in our time. Some of the events predicted thousands of years ago read like today's headlines. I have written dozens of books on the subject. I document the prophecies and their fulfillment on this program every week. Unlike every other prophetic text ever written, the Bible is self-authenticating. That means it proves itself by way of fulfilled prophecy. Fake news? The world is full of it. But you can stake your life, more than that, you can stake your eternal life on Jesus. He's not like anyone else. No one else had a birth like his, lived like him, or spoke like him. No one else died for our sins and rose from the grave. And it was all predicted in great detail, hundreds of years before he was born. He and the other prophets also gave us details about the Lord's second coming. In just the last few weeks, anyone paying attention to the prophecies and to the news has had his jaws drop in wonder. How could the prophets have known? The answer is simple. God knows everything, including the future. He uses his knowledge to verify his word, and his word from beginning to end testifies about Jesus. In a world filled with fake news, the good news of Jesus is the one sure thing. He said, "I am the truth." A multitude of voices shout for your attention, but the word of Jesus is like nothing else. You can rest in him completely, but if you've never rested in Jesus because you've never trusted in him, you can change that right now. It is so simple. In your own heart and with your mouth, just tell God in your own way that you understand, yet you have sinned and can never make it to heaven on your own. Ask him to forgive you of your sin and make you clean. Believe in your heart that Jesus truly is the Son of God and that he will do everything he has promised. Then simply accept the free gift of pardon that God has promised to everyone who believes and asks. If you did that, then you have just joined God's forever family, and you are now a child of the living God. Welcome home. Well, that's all for tonight, folks. I'll see you next week, God willing.
You've been watching the Hal Lindsey Report. To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Hal Lindsey Media Ministries, P.O. Box 470470, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74147. You can also support this ministry online. Visit hallindsey.com or